In the psychology of the modern civilized human being, it is difficult to overstate the significance of the house. The anatomy of the house is such that this analogy is less superficial than at first it may seem. It is a place we spend our childhoods filling with the monsters that will lay for years in patient silence. In truth, it is the bedroom, the waking mind. It is here that we place ourselves most at the house's mercy.
Witlessly settled upon a sleeper's tongue, you will be swallowed.
The basement is dark.
Corrupted games, in my opinion, are one of the most terrifying forms of horror. For those of you unaware, a corrupted game reacts and behaves differently to how it tells you that it's supposed to. A corrupted game starts off normally and usually appears to be cheerful or even boring. However, the more progression is made in the game, the more corrupt it becomes, trapping you inside this broken and horrific immersion. A feature that some of these corrupted games use is the glitching and warping of the visuals. This can be conveyed using static and glitching on the screen, or using the perspective of an old style camera or VCR player. There's always something unnerving about broken visuals. I think this is because they are the closest way of getting the virtual world of the game into the real life plane of technology. A great example of this technique is prevalent in games by Puppet Combo, such as the Nun Massacre, where the screen would be overrun with white noise and scan lines when the enemy comes near. And so, in my search for the next indie horror game to review in Scarred, I found a game that expertly categorises this new style of terror. May I present to you Anatomy by Kitty Horrorshow. The game takes the form of a simplistic style click and collect game, completing objectives and going around the various locations. The collectible items in this game take the form of old audio tapes that take you to a cassette player located in the kitchen. They each tell a little part of a commentary and that's it, that's the game. The game closes and you can go about your day, but a little text file in the game directory tells the information you need. Play the game again. This time the game is moulded and twisted to create an even more nightmarish scene that tells the story in a more disturbing way, revealing its vicious intent. I will now go through the game telling you what happens at each stage when you reload the game. Just remember, the further you fall into this game, the more panic-inducing it becomes. The game begins with a VHS tape being inserted into an old TV. The screen flashes on, showing the title of the game and the date. You enter the game spawning inside a house as if you've just walked through the front door. You walk around the house, finding each door locked, except the door to the kitchen at the far end of the house. The kitchen is furnished with a cooker, a few cupboards, a small table, a single chair. On the table you are greeted with a tape player shrouded in an ominous red glow.
In the psychology of the modern civilized human being, it is difficult to overstate the significance of the house. Since as early as the Neolithic era, humankind has defined itself by its buildings. Buildings for worship, buildings for socializing, buildings for protection, even buildings for the commemoration of the dead. But of all the structures that mankind has invented for itself, there is little doubt that the house is that which it relies upon most completely for its continued survival.
Text appears on the screen telling you to look for the next tape. This mechanic carries on through the house, taking you to each room where tapes will materialise seemingly from nowhere. Each tape, when taken back to the player, will continue this narrative about this so-called anatomy of the house. And with each tape, the imagery becomes even more disturbing.
A staircase bears more than a passing resemblance, both physically and symbolically, to a spine.
The game also tries to trick you into believing certain parts of the house you are trapped in are more dangerous than they appear. This is evident when the tape that leads you into the basement tells the player that the basement is dark and the graveyard of the mind, where all the bad thoughts are kept. Upon retrieving this tape, you are told that in fact it is the bedroom, the waking mind, that is most dangerous of all. Panic instantly kicks in when entering the master bedroom. This results in the door being completely removed and the walls painted with a blood red colour. The picture frames are filled with graphic imagery of the mouth, proving that you are fully at the house's mercy. With that, the game closes. At first, I believed this was the end of the game. This wouldn't have surprised me because the message, it seemed, was clear. As soon as the game loads, it's clear the game has changed when audio and visuals begin to pick up on the screen. This time, when you play the tapes, they are harshly distorted and damaged.
It's difficult to overstate the significance of the house.
Not only that, but the text relaying instructions is now becoming corrupted as well. Objects and furniture around the house are now starting to shift and glitch. 4 plates on the dining room table are now able to be broken when you click them. This could signify the meta element of the game, or maybe even a fourth wall break, but this theory is shaky at best. Tapes can now be found in new locations, such as the smaller bedroom upstairs. On this tape, a blood-curdling screaming and yelling replaces the commentary you were expecting. As you play the final tape, another different voice can be heard. This one is of a woman.
In the bedroom, don't.
I dream that there are teeth growing all over me, everywhere on me and in me, like cysts or bone spurs.
This is clearly the voice of the house itself, further symbolising that this house really is alive. The house seems angry about the presence of a man who enters the house and vandalises it.
He's moving through the first floor, breaking and upsetting things.
She tells us that she traps him in the basement and kills him, dissolving him as if he was inside her stomach. It cuts to the previous speaker who says, "The basement is dark." We enter the basement, and once again it crashes. But yeah, it's time to go back. Going back into the game, the video startup screen signifies that the corruption level will be increased once again. Sure enough, after spawning mysteriously in the bedroom, your vision is now tinted a harsh red, as the furniture is now completely broken. Strange vein-like wires reach from floor to ceiling in all directions. To accompany them, fleshy growths are now beginning to emerge. The tapes are now utterly indistinguishable. And the screaming tape is now much more aggressive. Paintings and imagery that were originally hung fashionably along the walls now plaster the building, such as the image of the mouth replacing the front door. The last tape finally traps us in the kitchen with only one way to go: into the basement. Entering the basement will result in your biggest mistake, as the stairs disappear, leaving you completely helpless to the house's mercy.
There is an important distinction that must be drawn between the words dissection and vivisection.
The commentator addresses you this time, in his next speech.
Your purpose was to listen, and yet at every turn you have pried, you have prodded, and you have interfered. You will be swallowed, because the truth is this. When a house is both hungry and awake, every room becomes a mouth.
You have been caught at last. In the final playable stage of the game, the player is taken to a new plane. You'll be taken to one of a few places. I will talk about the first one I was taken to, but if you want to experience the multiple endings inside this game, then I suggest you play it for yourself. I was taken to a vast lake of red liquid. The red wires fill the entire sky like lightning as a high-pitched static rings on throughout. Making your way through the lake, you will encounter another, smaller house. It groans and writhes with life. You reach the front door, and the game ends again. This is the end of the game, but you can reload the game up again, leaving you on the ground in the basement. It seems there was really no happy ending. From this point onwards, there is nothing left to explore. The game will loop on the same screen, but it doesn't leave you without one final tape.
What happens to a house when it is left alone? When it becomes worn and aged, it may haunt itself, inventing ghosts to walk its floors. And so, in fever and anger and loneliness, it may simply lie in wait. Doors open, shades drawn, hallways empty, hungry.
Okay, now I've spoken a lot about the events of this game, now let's look at why this game is as scary as it is. Games like these fit into the category of corrupted horror, which are very good at giving a strong feeling of anticipation, creating very disturbing imagery and encompass a meta element. But this game in particular also fits into another group called Fear of the Unknown. Unlike most types of horror games, this one doesn't need an actual enemy, they just need the player to feel there is something malicious out to get them. They also surround the player in an incredibly mysterious atmosphere and leave the player on edge during the experience. For me, Anatomy was absolutely petrifying, and strangely enough, there was not a single jump scare or entity to be afraid of. The horror element came wholly from the innate feeling that there could be something just around the corner. This feeling was made partially by the visuals and audio. The medium of playing through VHS tapes means that the events you are about to go through have already happened, which would lead you to believe that someone documented them for a reason, signifying that something awful might have happened. Your field of view is limited, creating a dark, fog-like ambience that surrounds you as you play. The audio is also disfigured and grainy, making your journey just a little bit more unnerving. Something I noticed while replaying this game a few more times is that this game loves to use the colour red. Red, as everyone knows, is a colour that represents danger and is made to make you feel uncomfortable, almost misleading you as you are never being chased or harmed. These factors alone make the game a good game, but the tapes are what really makes it a great game. This game mechanic, although simple, drives its narrative and gives the game its meaning. When I was told that certain rooms in the house are dangerous and represent the mind, mouth, and even stomach, I felt very reluctant to go there, even though the directions force me to find the tapes. It always feels like you are being lured to your own demise, which of course is the house's intention, and you don't know that until the very end. As for the improvements to this game, there really isn't much to say. Anatomy is much more focused on relaying its message and its brilliant atmosphere to the player than any major game mechanics, so on that focus, I don't really have anything to complain about. Originally I was going to say that maybe including more aspects of gore and violence could make the imagery feel more disturbing, and the house feel more sinister, but then I realised that this really isn't the game's claim to fear, so to speak. Plus, at one point you literally wade through an entire pool of blood, so yeah. Maybe including more backstory to the house, even in subtle hints, could leave players with less questions, but then that would leave no feeling of ambiguity at the end of the game. There is only one thing. This is exploring the meta element. Not just cracking the fourth wall, but shattering it. Some games nowadays are finding ways to bring themselves even closer to reality, using methods such as creating files on the player's computer, or leaving creepy messages and audio tracks. This adds heavily to the corrupted style. They make the whole experience feel much more personal, and if Anatomy was able to pull this effect off, it would be 100% terrifying. Not to say that it isn't already. Other than that, well done Anatomy, you stumped me. To summarise, this game is utterly and truly unique. Its ability to scare the player without the need for jump scares or even a villain out to get you is highly commendable. The overall style of a glitchy VHS recording is just eerie, and the ambience is just so well crafted that it didn't even need a monster or entity to make the player panic. The simple search and collect mechanic of the game makes it feel like Slenderman without Slenderman, but the atmosphere and tension built by the visuals, audio and tapes makes up for the lack of jump scares and gore. I love how the method of replaying the same game moves the storyline forward, because you don't even need to play the multiple versions of the game to understand its storyline and intention, but because of natural curiosity, we are always drawn to know more. As for the future of this game, I'm not expecting a sequel and there really doesn't need to be one, but we can only hope that the developer continues to explore new ways and scenarios to scare us. Remember to check out the game in the link down below so you too can unravel the meaning and endings of anatomy. For now, thank you all for watching this review, leave a like and show your support for this series, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.
In the psychology of the modern civilized human being, it is difficult to overstate the significance of the house. Since as early as the Neolithic era, humankind has defined itself by its buildings. Buildings for washing, buildings for socializing, buildings for protection, even buildings for commemorating the dead. But of all structures mankind has invented for itself, there is little doubt that the house is that which it relies upon most completely for its continued survival. The anatomy of the house is such that this analogy is less superficial than at first it may seem. To carry it further, if you were to dissect the house as we might a human cadaver, we would find ourselves able to isolate and describe its various appendages and their functions in a decidedly anatomical fashion. There is even a fair number of direct comparisons to be drawn between those organs of the house and those of the human body. While poets and psychoanalysts no doubt dread the thought of a dark basement, in truth it is the bedroom, the waking mind, that place of dreams which is actually the most frightening of all. The basement is dark.